I woke up this morning and couldn't remember my own name for about 15 seconds. It came back eventually. It always does. But those 15 seconds felt like drowning in silence, like my entire identity had been scraped out and replaced with static. I'm writing this down because I need to remember who I am, because lately I'm not so sure anymore. It started with Marcus, or maybe it started before that, and I just didn't notice. We'd been roommates in college, stayed close after graduation, even though he moved across the state for work. We'd grab drinks every few months, text stupid memes back and forth the usual. He was one of those steady people you don't worry about. Reliable, grounded, the kind of guy who showed up when he said he would, until he didn't. He'd planned this trip out west, somewhere in the mountains near the Idaho border. A solo thing. He wanted to disconnect, clear his head, do some soul searching or whatever people do when they're tired of their own lives. I didn't think much of it. Marcus had always been the outdoorsy type. He was supposed to be gone for 5 days. He came back after 8. When he finally answered my text, all he said was that he'd gotten turned around, lost the trail, spent a few extra nights in his car. Normal enough, I guess, except when I saw him 2 weeks later, he looked like he'd aged a year. His face was thinner, shadows pulled under his eyes, and he had this habit of glancing over his shoulder every few minutes, like he was expecting someone to tap him on the back. We met at a bar, downtown. He ordered a beer, barely touched it. I kept the conversation light at first, talking about work, asking about his trip. He gave short answers, nodding along, but not really listening. Finally, I asked him point blank if something had happened out there. He stared at his beer for a long time. Then he said, "Do you ever feel like someone's standing right behind you, but when you turn around there's nothing there?" I laughed nervously. "Sure, I guess everyone does. Not like this." His voice was flat, not for days at a time. He told me he'd been camping near this dried up riverbed miles from the nearest road. The first 2 nights were fine. Quiet, almost too quiet, he said, like the forest was holding its breath. On the 3rd night, he woke up to footsteps circling his tent. Slow, deliberate steps. He called out, asked if anyone was there. The footsteps stopped. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, he heard his own voice call back. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Same inflection, same cadence, like a recording played back through a cheap speaker. He didn't leave the tent that night. In the morning, there were no tracks in the dirt except his own, but the voice came back the next night and the night after that. Each time it sounded a little more natural, a little more real. By the 5th night, it wasn't just repeating him anymore. It was having conversations with itself. Do you think he knows? Not yet, but he will. Should we let him see? Not yet. Wait. Marcus packed up at dawn and drove for 6 hours straight without stopping. He said he kept checking the rearview mirror, convinced something was crouched in the back seat. When he got home, he locked every door, closed every blind, and didn't leave his apartment for 3 days. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him he'd just been exhausted, that isolation does weird things to your brain. But the look in his eyes stopped me. He wasn't asking for reassurance. He was warning me. "If I ever show up at your place without calling first," he said quietly, "don't let me in." I frowned. "What?" "I'm serious." He leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. "If I just appear at your door, if I text you out of nowhere, asking to come over, don't open it. Don't answer. Just pretend I'm not there. Marcus, you're scaring me." "Good." He stood up, threw some cash on the table, and left without another word. That was the last time I saw him. For a while, Everything seemed normal. He texted me a few times over the next couple of weeks, usual stuff. Memes, links to articles, nothing strange. I convinced myself he'd just been stressed. Maybe he had a panic attack out in the woods and spiraled. It happens. Then, about a month after that conversation, the texts stopped. I tried calling, no answer. I messaged him on every platform I could think of. Nothing. I even called his work and they told me he'd taken a leave of absence 2 weeks prior. No explanation, just stopped showing up. I didn't panic right away. Marcus was an adult. Maybe he needed space. Maybe he was dealing with something personal. But then I started dreaming about him. Not normal dreams, the kind that felt too sharp. Too focused, like someone's projecting them directly into your skull. In every one, Marcus was standing just outside my apartment door, knocking softly. I'd walk over, look through the peephole, and see him standing there, smiling. But his smile was wrong, too wide, too still. In the dream, I'd reach for the doorknob, and just before I touched it, I'd hear his voice from behind me. Don't. I'd turn, and there he'd be, standing in my living room, shaking his head slowly. His eyes were pleading, terrified. "It's not me," he'd whisper. "Don't let it in." I'd wake up sweating, heart hammering, and check my phone. Nothing. But then, about a week after the dream started, I got a text from his number. "Hey, can I stop by?" No punctuation. Marcus always used periods, even in casual texts. It was a quirk of his, something he'd done for as long as I'd known him. I stared at the message for a long time, remembering what he'd said at the bar. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another text. "Really need to talk?" Then another. Please him outside. I wasn't going to open the door. I wasn't. But I looked through the peephole anyway. He was standing in the hallway, hands in his pockets, staring directly at the peephole like he knew I was watching. His face was calm, neutral. He didn't blink. I stepped back, pulse racing. My phone buzzed again. "I know you're in there." I turned off my phone, locked the deadbolt, and sat on my couch in the dark. For the next 3 hours, I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. And neither did he. But I could hear him breathing on the other side of the door. When I finally worked up the nerve to check the people again, the hallway was empty. I convinced myself I'd imagined it, that I was just feeding into my own paranoia. But the next morning, my neighbor knocked on my door and asked why Marcus had been standing in the hallway all night. "All night?" I repeated. She nodded. "I saw him when I took my dog out around midnight. He was just standing there, staring at your door. Didn't say anything. I figured you two were fighting or something. Was he still there when you came back?" "Yeah, around 3 in the morning. Same spot, same expression." She paused. "He didn't even blink?" I thought maybe he was sleepwalking. I thanked her and closed the door. My hands were shaking. That night, I started hearing the knocking. Not loud, not aggressive. Just 3 soft taps, evenly spaced. Tap, tap, tap. Always around 2 in the morning. I never answered. I never looked. But every night, without fail, the knocking came. And every night, I'd hear his voice, muffled but clear, speaking through the door. "I'm sorry," he'd say. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Sometimes it sounded like he was crying. Sometimes it sounded like he was laughing. But it always sounded like Marcus. I stopped sleeping. I started taking pills just to get a few hours of rest. But even then, the dreams found me. Marcus standing outside. Marcus in my living room, Marcus sitting on the edge of my bed watching me sleep, whispering things I couldn't quite hear. I thought about moving. I thought about calling the police. But what would I even tell them? That my missing friend was haunting my apartment? That something was pretending to be him? They'd think I was insane, Dot. Maybe I am, Dot. Because lately, I've started noticing things. Small things. My keys aren't where I left them. My coffee mug is in the sink when I know I put it in the dishwasher. The chair at my desk is pulled out even though I pushed it in before bed. And this morning, I found a note on my kitchen counter, written in handwriting that looked almost like mine. You should let me in. It's cold out here. I don't lock my doors anymore. It doesn't matter. Whatever's out there, it's already inside. I see it sometimes, standing in the corner of my vision. When I turn to look, there's nothing there. But I feel it, watching, waiting, learning. Last night I woke up and couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, the doctors would call it. But I know better. I could feel the weight of something sitting on the edge of my bed, breathing softly. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. And then I heard Marcus's voice, close to my ear, whispering so softly I almost didn't catch it. I'm almost ready. When I finally snapped out of it, the room was empty, but my bedroom door was open. I know I closed it before I went to sleep. I called in sick to work today. I haven't left my apartment in 4 days. I keep the lights on all the time now because the darkness feels too crowded, like there's something in it waiting to step forward. My phone buzzed an hour ago, a text from Marcus's number. Thanks for waiting. I didn't respond. But when I looked up, I saw my reflection in the black screen of my TV. Except it wasn't quite right. The reflection smiled. I didn't. The realization hit me like cold water. I stood perfectly still, staring at the dark screen, watching my reflection grin wider while my actual face remained frozen in horror. Then the screen went completely black, and I was looking at nothing but my own pale face reflected in the glass. Normal again, terrified again. Hey, what's going on? Your text was weird. What did I sound like? I asked. What? When I texted you, what did I sound like? There was a pause. It's a text. You didn't sound like anything. Are you feeling okay? I wanted to tell her. I wanted to explain everything. But how could I? It sounded insane even in my own head. So I told her I was fine, just tired, and ended the call. But I wasn't fine. I started documenting everything, writing down where I'd been, what I'd done, comparing my memories to the evidence on my phone and computer. There were gaps, hours I couldn't account for, days where my calendar said I'd been places I had no memory of visiting. Last Tuesday, according to my email, I'd scheduled a dentist appointment and attended it. There was a confirmation email, a reminder, and a follow-up thanking me for coming in. But I didn't go. I couldn't have. I was at work. I remember being at work, sitting through a budget meeting that lasted 3 hours. I called the dentist's office. They confirmed I'd been there. The receptionist described what I'd been wearing, a blue sweater and jeans. I looked in my closet. The blue sweater was there, neatly folded, with a small stain on the collar that I didn't remember making. I checked my work calendar. The budget meeting had been canceled that morning. I'd apparently sent an email to my team saying I'd be working from home that day. I didn't remember any of it. That's when the real terror set in, because I realized what was happening. It wasn't just watching me anymore. It wasn't just learning. It was living. Going to appointments, sending emails, talking to people. All why. What? Slept, blacked out, ceased to exist for hours at a time while something else wore my face and walked through my life. I started leaving notes for myself, detailed accounts of what I'd done each day, who I'd talked to, where I'd been. I'd hide them in places only I would think to look. Inside book covers, taped under drawers, folded into pockets of jackets I never wore. The next morning, I found one of my notes on the kitchen counter. It had been unfolded, read, and left out in the open. Underneath it, in handwriting that looked almost exactly like mine, was a new message. You're making this harder than it needs to be. My blood went cold. I grabbed my phone and started to call the police. But before I could dial, I stopped. What would I tell them? That I was leaving notes for myself, that I suspected something was impersonating me, but only sometimes, and I couldn't prove it because it was me. They'd think I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. Maybe that's all this had ever been. Stress and paranoia and lack of sleep creating patterns where none existed. But then I remembered Marcus. I remembered the look in his eyes when he warned me. I remembered my neighbor saying she'd seen him standing outside my door all night. I remembered the breathing on the other side of the door, the texts, the voice that sounded perfect but felt wrong. This was real. I needed proof, real proof. Something concrete that I could show someone, anyone, to make them believe me. I bought a camera. A small one, the kind you can hide easily. I set it up in my bedroom, pointed at the door, and let it record while I slept. The first night, nothing happened. Just 8 hours of me sleeping restlessly, tossing and turning, occasionally sitting up and looking around before lying back down. The second night, I got up at 3 a.m., walked to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, and went back to bed. I had no memory of this. When I watched the footage, I moved slowly, mechanely, like a puppet being operated by someone still learning how the strings worked. The third night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat up in bed at 11 p.m., stared directly at the camera for almost an hour, then got up and left the room. The camera couldn't see into the hallway, but I could hear sounds. Footsteps, drawers opening and closing, the front door opening, closing. Then silence. I returned 4 hours later, sat back down on the bed, stared at the camera for another 30 minutes. Then I laid down and closed my eyes. In the morning, I checked my shoes. They were wet. It had been raining last night. I'd been outside. Where had I gone? I checked my car. The odometer showed I'd driven 73 miles, round trip to nowhere I recognized. I tried to retrace the route, but nothing looked familiar. Just empty roads and dark fields and the persistent feeling that I was driving towards something I desperately didn't want to find. I gave up halfway and turned back, but as I drove home, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. A car following me. Same make and model as mine. Same color. For just a moment, I thought I saw the driver's face. It looked exactly like me. The other car passed without slowing down. I caught a glimpse of the driver. Different person, different face. Just paranoia, just fear playing tricks. But I couldn't shake the image. That night I didn't set up the camera. Instead, I stayed awake. Really awake. I sat in my living room with all the lights on, door locked, with a knife from the kitchen on the table in front of me. I wasn't going to let it take control again. I wasn't going to lose any more time. Around 2 a.m., I heard the knocking. 3 soft taps. Familiar now. Expected. I didn't move. didn't respond, just sat there, staring at the door, gripping the knife. Then I heard my own voice from the hallway. I know you're scared, I understand, but you need to let me in so we can talk about this. My voice. My exact cadence and tone. The way I'd sound if I was trying to calm someone down, trying to be reasonable. I'm not going to hurt you, I continued. I just want to help. This doesn't have to be difficult. I stayed silent. You're going to have to sleep eventually. You're going to have to close your eyes. And when you do, I'll still be here. I'll always be here. The doorknob turned, slowly. Testing. You can't keep me out forever. It was right. I knew it was right. I could feel exhaustion pulling at me, making my thoughts fuzzy and slow. I'd been awake for almost 40 hours. I couldn't last much longer. But I had to try. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and barricaded the door with my dresser. Then I called the one person I thought might believe me, Rachel, Marcus's sister. We'd met a few times at gatherings, exchanged numbers, stayed vaguely in touch. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be her. She answered after 6 rings, voice thick with sleep. Hello, Rachel, it's me. I need your help. There was a pause. Do I know you? My stomach dropped. It's me, Marcus's friend. We met at his birthday party 2 years ago. You gave me your number in case I ever heard from him. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't have a brother named Marcus, she said slowly. I think you have the wrong number. I checked my phone. It was definitely her number, the same one I'd saved years ago. Rachel, please. This is important. Your brother went missing a few months ago. He came to me and warned me about something, and now it's happening to me too. I need to know if you've heard from him, if you've seen anything strange. I'm sorry, she said, and she sounded genuinely apologetic. But I'm an only child. I don't know who you are or who you think you're looking for, but you need to stop calling this number. She hung up. I sat there, phone in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. Had I remembered wrong? Had I gotten confused? But no, I could picture her clearly. Short dark hair, green eyes. She worked as a teacher. She told me about her students at Marcus's party. Unless that memory was false. Unless I'd never actually met her. Unless everything I remembered about Marcus was somehow wrong. I pulled up Marcus's social media profiles. They were all gone, not deactivated, deleted entirely, like they'd never existed. I searched for his name online, nothing. No results, no mentions, no trace of a person named Marcus who fit his description. I checked my photos. All the pictures I had of him were gone. Even the ones I'd never backed up online. Even the physical photos I'd kept in a box under my bed. The box was still there, but it was empty. Someone had erased him. Completely, or he never existed at all. I don't know which possibility terrified me more. The knocking came again, louder this time, more insistent. Let me in. My voice called from the hallway. We need to talk. You're confused. You're tired. I can help you understand. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block it out, but the voice just got louder, more demanding. You can't hide from yourself. You can't run from who you are. That's when I understood. It wasn't trying to replace me. It wasn't trying to take over my life. It already had. I was the copy. The mistake. The version that didn't quite fit anymore. And it was here to fix that. I looked down at my hands. They felt real. But so did everything else. and apparently none of it could be trusted. How long had I been the copy? Days, weeks. Had I ever been real at all? The barricade against my bedroom door started to shake. Something was pushing against it. Hard. I backed into the corner, still holding the knife, knowing it wouldn't help. You can't fight yourself. You can't win against something that knows every thought you've ever had, every fear, every weakness. The dresser toppled over with a crash. The door swung open, and there I was, standing in the doorway looking at myself. It smiled. I didn't. It's time, it said in my voice. You've done well. You've made this body look lived in, natural. But I don't need you anymore. I wanted to scream, to fight, to do something, but I couldn't move. My body wouldn't respond, like it had never really been mine to control in the first place. It walked toward me slowly, reaching out with my hand. Don't worry, it whispered. You won't remember any of this. No one will. You'll just stop, and I'll keep going. Living your life better than you ever did. Its hand touched my shoulder, and everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting at my kitchen table. Morning light streamed through the windows. My phone showed it was 9 a.m. Saturday. There was a cup of coffee in front of me, still warm. I didn't remember making it. I looked around the apartment. Everything was clean, organized. Better than I usually kept it. There were groceries in the fridge I didn't remember buying. Fresh flowers on the counter I'd never purchased before. And on the table, next to the coffee, there was a note in my handwriting. Everything's fine now. You can rest. I picked up my phone and opened the camera. Pointed it at my face. I look normal, tired but normal. Nothing unusual, nothing wrong. But when I smiled at my reflection in the phone screen, just for a moment, it felt like the smile came half a second before I decided to make it. Like my face knew what to do before I did. I put the phone down. Everything's fine now. I'm writing this because I need someone to know. Even if no one believes it, even if I don't believe it myself anymore, if you ever get a message from me, if I show up at your door, if I call you and ask for help, don't answer. Because it won't be me. It hasn't been me for a while now, and I don't think I'm ever coming back.